So
Going live. Woohoo! Oh, wait, I need, yes. This is my moderator hat that I'm now wearing. Hello.
Nice.
I have enough hats here that I may actually be able to wear a different hat for almost every panel that I'm part of. I think that's going to be pretty fun. Let's see. I'm going to, before we get started here, I want to make sure that this live stream is also pinned on the Facebook page so people can find it. And it usually takes about a minute for it to show up anyway. So we will. Oh, that's an hour ago. Aha, live now. That's what we want. Marking it as an announcement. Okay. Good deal. Oh, there's so many live streams popping up. This is complicated. All right. Cool. Here we go. So welcome, everybody. This is our counselor panel. We have several counselors. Two of us are members of the House. One of us is an ally. Oh, thank you, Hades. I like my hat too. We've missed you all too. I wanted to have the counselor panel right after opening ritual because I feel like sometimes hanging out with counselors is like getting a big group hug.
Hugs are wonderful.
Even if we can't actually hug each other physically, like at least we can be here.
I hug you.
Hug the screen. So let's see. How will this work? We will be. We have a couple of topics that we want to talk about, but we will be open for questions after we've gotten through those. At any point, if you have questions, feel free to plop them in the chat. If you can see us, we can see your questions. And yes, absolutely. Anyone, you don't have to be a counselor or identify as a counselor to be in this chat. We welcome all. We're kind of squishy sometimes. So, yay. All right. So let us start with quick introductions so that everybody knows who each of us is. My face might be familiar. You might see a lot of my face this weekend because I'm going to be moderator for a lot of panels.
We love your face.
Yay! I'm glad you do, because otherwise it would get really old really fast. But yes, I am Illyria. I am a first degree member of the House. I am in the Counselor Caste. I am also, which I forgot to mention in the opening, I am one of the 5 guardians for the House right now. I am the guardian for the community. So I am not a guardian of any specific caste within the House. The role that I'm standing in right now is to try to keep an eye on what our communities need from us, and how we can both further our mission as a group and a nonprofit, and also maybe share some cool information along the way. So, who wants to go next?
I can go.
All right.
I'm Kelly. I am a first degree counselor, the House Kheperu. I am a respiratory therapist by day and obnoxiously empathic. So yay for the situation of the world right now. I apologize right now. I suddenly got very, very cold. So I will try not to shiver on camera. But, and I lost my train of thought like I want to do after a giant ritual. So I apologize. Yeah. But yes, I'm happy to be here, and we're here to answer whatever questions you have. And if we don't, you can always catch us later during the open discussion.
Yeah, perfect. Oof. And Elfie.
Yes. Hello. Can you all hear me?
Yes, that is awesome.
Okay. Okay. My name's Elfie. I am ally to HK House. I've been going to Gather since I think 2009. I became ally in 2013. 13, 12, something around, something there. Oh, did we lose a Kelly?
I think Kelly's still there, but her screen has turned off. So my guess is she can hear what we were saying. It might just be a connection issue. Yay, she's back!
Woo! And yeah, I'm primarily counselor. When I go in ritual, yeah, that's about it, really. Been hanging around here a very long time.
Cool.
I apologize for that. I had to grab a blanket that I was sitting on, and I didn't want to lean forward and splash YouTube land.
I mean, it's up to you, but sure, yeah. You set your own boundaries.
It's not that kind of show. So, Elfie, they're saying they're having a hard time hearing you.
Okay. Yeah, it might be that just...
How about now?
My guess is that's better. I think there may also be a connection lag on your end. But we will try to power through, and if it gets too bad, we can have you log out, log back in.
Yeah, we'll try that too.
So I have a couple of questions prepared to get us started. But before I ask any of them, that ritual, like, whoa.
That was giant.
Yeah. I mean, I could see on my end that there were like 160 plus people in it. So that was fun. That was a lot. Oh my gosh, it felt to me like it was a very like sparkly web work in a way that I'm not used to. Like, I don't usually get colors, but I was like, there's like silver lights around. It was really neat, is what I'm trying to say.
I honestly have never done anything in person quite that large. Well, being in person at Gather is that large, but you're also looking at the people that you're working with.
Yeah.
This was the first time I've done anything that large on an astral level, and it looks like just scanning some of the comments on the side here, people were feeling similarly the same way, emotional, that they saw everybody, that it was bright. So we're getting confirmation on that too. It was super sparkly, and it wasn't just my fault. Oh, that's a nice one. The ritual is like watching the night sky suddenly fill with stars in my brain.
Yeah, no, totally.
So that's kind of awesome. Yeah, that was ginormous. On my end, I know I lost my meat suit at one point. And thankfully something Zosh said kind of pulled me back into myself for a little bit, because I decided to start go floating down the pathways.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you're back.
Yay. So yeah, I'm trying to read and talk at the same time.
Don't bother with the reading and talking. We got to have our conversation, and we'll catch up, and like
we'll catch up with them.
Conversation when we can.
Okay.
But yeah, that was an incredible first ritual. I feel like I am definitely glad that we, the counselors, are here for like our panel now, because also like I think if I had just been in person with a ritual like that, I would definitely need like a fuzzy time of like, yeah, I'm here in my body.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, very much so needed to check back in with my human meat suit.
And now we have a Shay. Hello, Shay.
Hey, Shay.
So can you I know you already sort of introduced yourself in the last panel, the welcome opening thing. But folks who might not have seen that, can you just give a brief like, hello, here's what I do?
I will use my words.
Hooray! Wait, those aren't your words. I see what's happening. Bonuses of technology. Wait, I'm not hearing any words, Shay. What's going on?
Are we live with this already?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay. I am Shay. I am a counselor second degree. I've been with the house for over 2 decades. I think I started joining in with things back in '98 when I encountered the house on some online forums and just sort of joined in with discussion groups for a couple of years before actually finally making my way out to Gather in my first Gather, I should say. I stepped in and chose to step into the role of a counselor, primarily because I carry a lot of connections with me, and the connective nature of the counselor caste was the strongest point for me to be able to interact with everybody, with the house and its structure as it was at that time. There's been a lot of evolution over the years, and yeah, I have been counseling for feels like ever.
Cool. Yeah, it looks like Elfie's having connection issues. So while we are energetically connected, she may be popping in and out to try to fix those.
Sounds good.
But so while she's doing that, I've got a question for those of us who are still here. So for the people who may not be as familiar with the counselor caste, and also because the counselor caste is like the most flexible and potentially varied of castes and how we work with energy, can you say a little bit about what drew you to the counselor caste? Like what made it feel like this was a good place for you to be within the structure of the house? And I can go first if I'll just go first. How about that? Give you all a chance to think about stuff. So for me, I think the best answer to why I identify as counselor has to do with how most easily work with energy. That's part of, I guess that's part of the definition of how we choose our case also, is what is the most natural flow of energy for each person. And for me, I feel like being a counselor means focusing on those interpersonal connections. And it also, like being a counselor for me is also defined in relationship to the other castes. So I see my role very much as one of support, especially for priests. And as I am married to Michelle, that relationship is clearly a thing. So there's an energy exchange that happens there, as well as with like people who fill the priest role within the house. But yeah, for me, it felt like a sort of natural, like, this is comfy. I think I will stay. What about for other folks?
We can just pass it that direction. So when the very first gather I went to, I had no idea where I fit. I had an inkling of it. Counselor was the first thing I tried. And like you, it's just kind of where I fit. And as I've gone through dedicancy and now into first degree, and then years of working more closely with the house members and in that system, it's just kind of turned up that it's how I've been functioning my entire life. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm very an emotional person. I feel strong connections to those in my circle, whether it's given family or blood family or chosen family. I tend to rapid fire put connections together. Like it's more like bumper cars in my brain and not a exact thought pattern sometimes when it goes along with the energy work. And then also being an empath. Empaths tend to, not always, but tend to fall into the counselor role. I had a better thought for that, but I apologize. My brain's still a little mushy from the ritual. But yeah, it's kind of like it's where I felt most comfortable. I have kind of leaned into exploring priest a little bit with some of the performance work that I have done. And I can do that, but it burns me out a heck of a lot quicker than it would be for me to be counselor. And warrior, I can do that, but it is downright painful, and I prefer not to. Mm-hmm. So that's my take.
Chip. Down to Shay. Pick on to Shay. Hang on. Shay, your sound seems to have cut out.
Refresh the question.
So what
Just
was it
the
that drew you to the counselor case? Or how did you come to understand this was a good place for you to fit within the house?
So for me, I on a subtle body and energetic standpoint, I resonate sort of in between all three castes. I have aspects of warrior and I have aspects of priest, and at the time, I recognized that the majority of the house as a whole would sort of resonate and sort of see me in a counselor way. And also the fact that where warriors deal with the sort of lower material frequency of energy and priests deal with everything all the way up here, the counselor sitting in the middle was the best place for me to come in between all three aspects of who I am. And so it was just sort of natural for me to take up the counselor role. I was, prior to joining the house, prior to actually coming out to gathers and starting to work with the energy system of the house, I did a lot of my own work solo, and so I was my own grounding aspect and my own connective aspect and my own projective directive aspect. And in coming in at the time that I did, there were a lot of warriors and there were a lot of priests and there were a few counselors. And at that point in time, the counselors were sort of trying to sort of stabilize their internal structure within the house. And so I just sort of fell into that role because that was the place where there was the most need at the time. So moving on.
And on to Elfie. What draws you to the role of counselor in ritual? Uh-oh.
Why the role of counselor?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah. What draws you to the role of counselor in ritual?
God's fine. Naturally, like I have tried stepping in as warrior and priest, and the priest wasn't too bad. Warrior, forget about it.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, you're cutting out a bit, Elfie.
But counselor.
Oh, that's such a bad connection.
I think cell phones are giving us issues.
Okay, so what Elfie had just been saying, I think, yeah, she's having connection issues again. What she had been saying. Oh, are you back? I'm not.
Hello.
Hello. It sounded like there was a theme that popped up among all of our answers, which is that some of why we end up in the counselor role is that we tried other ones. They didn't quite work as well. Either they weren't as comfortable, or they didn't feel like the best fit for us somehow. And yeah, I think a lot of folks who come together and stand in ritual do that. Like they'll try one role, and if it's cool, then maybe they try another one. If that's not cool, that's easier to figure out. Yeah. So we had a question already, which is actually also one of the questions that I had lined up for us. Given how different the past few months have been in terms of your ability to actually interact with other people energetically in person, how have you been coping? And what has that felt like? I know for me, I may be an odd one with this one, because for me, having less interaction with people actually made me more excited about the interactions with people that I did have. So I feel like for me, I may have been a little overpeopled before quarantine. And I mean, to be fair, I also live in a house with multiple good friends and my partner. So I'm not severely underpeopled now, but I'm definitely not overwhelmed with people in a way that I think makes me really see and value better those interactions I do have. So I feel like I'm much more grateful and less overwhelmed for the people in my life. Hello, people. Kelly or Shay, who wants to go next? All right, Kelly, it's you.
I had to find the unmute button.
Aha.
When everything first went down, I was actually quarantined, not able to leave my house for 14 days because I had an exposure where I worked. There's my wife in the house and our now almost 18-year-old daughter. And we were all very stressed and on edge and agitated. And it was probably the hardest 2 weeks that I've ever had to energetically get through. Just because we were all not used to being in the same house at the same time. There's either my kiddo was in school or one of us that was at work, so there was always downtime. So when you add the unknown of the social situation in the world and like not being able to leave, and then you add in all the stress, and it was kind of a giant powder keg for a while. It has let up some. We're all back to work. But I'm finding that I'm way more extroverted than I like to say I am. The weekly connection rituals that the house has been doing has pretty much been getting me through week to week. I have been struggling the past week and a half with a lot of physical issues because of not being able to be out and pull ambient energy and cycle energy the way I normally would. So it's been a huge learning curve for me. I've had to learn to be a little gentler with myself, and find the small moments, the small quiet moments, the things to do that kind of take your mind off of the situations and the state of the world right now, so that whatever you do have and energy that you do have and that you're holding on to, you can kind of process and for lack of a better word, compact it to make it stronger. So I know I tend to spread my connections everywhere and all at once and forget about myself. So I have had to really consciously try and pull back some of the connections I have to friends and to family so that I'm keeping myself at a steady state, or at least trying to, and not bleeding the energy out to those I'm concerned about. So it's kind of like I've had to not cut myself off, but kind of dampen the connections that I have to people not directly in my house. So it's been a challenge.
Yeah. How about for you, Shay? Looks like
No, really, unmute.
Again. There we are.
There we go.
Unmute.
For me, it was both. It's been a sort of big change and almost no change at all. My work professionally and the schoolwork that I was doing was all primarily remote to begin with. So it was an instant transition to be able to go from having to commute into a job and to just sort of isolate at home. I operationally am usually more sort of socially isolated and distanced from most of the people that I have the strongest connections with. I have some friends, sort of locally within my area, but for the most part, a lot of the people that I'm most strongly connected with are really, really far away and always have been. And so for me, it was almost a regressionary state, heading back to sort of who I was and where I've been prior to when I first found and connected with the house, when a lot of the interactions I've had are distant, sometimes to the tune of half a world away. Um, and from those days, I did a lot of work, really just in utilizing technology back in sort of the AOL bidong 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 sort of chat room era, and that has sort of just been extended and extrapolated into this time where we are now. I mean, there are. I feel like from a work perspective, I actually see and interact with my coworkers more now that I am not in the office than when I was there, because I would be forgotten about in a sort of subtle way. I would blend into the background, and now they seek me out because it's sort of what they need to do to get things fixed. And to some extent, I'm trying to sort of figure out how to order that. To some extent, the energetic level, the connecting with folks on social media or on chats on Zoom and whatnot, there is a difference to the feel of it. From the counselor aspect, it is the vibrant, dynamic, connective energy of an immediate physical situation that is what most sustains me. And in the absence of that, my system begins to cycle down into more of a regressed subsistence state. And I've sort of been living there for, even prior to when things began to sweep the world, for the better part of a year or more already. So this has been a more extreme version of the sort of isolation that I just sort of naturally exist in.
Makes sense.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, Elfie, I know it's been a little choppy probably on your end too, but we've been going around addressing the question of how the last few months have felt for you energetically, with the decreased inability to interact face to face with people, and whatever that holds for you in an energy sort of sense.
Uh, it's actually been kind of interesting because I'm a bit of more of an introvert naturally, but this extreme way of it has definitely affected me in some ways where it's like the connections, the actual physical interactions with people has taken a slight toll when it got to like the second month. It was like, okay, now I'm feeling it.
Hmm.
Even though like I'm here with my family and everything, it's still I mean I have a friend like down the road and we've been mostly just FaceTime because we're like,
Hmm.
yeah, uh, I stay here, you stay out because she has like a grandmother and it's like, let's not chance that. Um, and it's interesting just because it's both the personal connections with people has felt a little straining at times,
Hmm.
even though we can connect online. And but also I've noticed too limiting going out, especially during when we were in the red zone and everything here in PA, it became even more anxious and more um I felt like more times than not I needed like Jax to like ground me out because I would like go out shopping for the
Hmm.
week or 2 weeks and be like, oh my god. It was just a little too much. And
Yeah.
normally it's like, okay, I can function. It's like, no, I can't.
Yeah. So it sounds like overwhelm was a little closer
Yeah.
to. Yeah, that makes sense. So we've got an interesting question from the folks who are watching our panel. And I want to get everybody's input on this question, both for what they're asking and the answer to it. The question is, would it be incorrect to see the castes as levels of ability to relate to the current timeline or incarnation? So the way I'm reading that, it sounds like it's asking if there's sort of a hierarchy of like how energetically sensitive people are. And well, yes, I have a Zash in my ear going, no! The answer was going to be no, without the hand waving, but I can do hand waving too.
Sorry, I'm still looking.
But yeah, so there's not a hierarchy, if that's what you're asking about. The way that energy works differently for each caste is more about just the fact that energy works differently for different people. We get to see a lot of flashy stuff on TV about people that I think our system would mostly be characterized as priests. Like they're much more sensitive and like often able to see or perceive energy and like very ways that come across as sort of flashy and visual. That's not a universal statement. But everybody else who's in the house also does very different things, and those different ways of working with energy are just as important, even if they're not as flashy. So that's my answer. And let me top the question back on. What are other people's takes? I know, Shay, you often have thoughts about timelines that I don't necessarily follow, but I like listening to them anyway.
Would it be incorrect to see the castes as levels of ability to relate to the current timeline incarnation? So I don't. What I hear in that question is a sort of asking of, does a level of it? I'm trying to understand see the caste as levels of ability.
Yeah, that's where I took it to hierarchy.
Or also like a strength of, you know, where you are within your own internal progression, almost like it, like if the question of levels is more about like dedicant first degree, second degree kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's true. There is that sort of alternate direction of structure within the house. So like you start and you build up your abilities, but that's not about caste.
Right. When we talk about this incarnation, everything about who we are, and really whether, you know, regardless of what caste you're coming from, this life is about understanding who you are and possibly working through stuff that has been, but who you are now is distinct from who you were. So the abilities you've had, they're still present, but they may function differently now. You may have different inclinations based on upbringing and physicality and what you're able to emotionally process in a moment. I don't really see it as there being like an interconnection between the strength of an ability. It relates to being here and now within an incarnation, or even the strength that one has within, you know, who they are right now. The journey that I step onto when I walk when I walked the path as a counselor, is learning, who am I? How do I, you know, starting with how do I work with energy? How do I interact with these connective forces? How do I identify the emotional aspects that are always around me, that I'm always tapping into? How do I separate myself from what I might be picking up from other people? And slowly begin to sort of bring into that a firmer sense of like integrating what you remember with who you are, that you are your own unique identity. Who you are now in this lower self is different from the higher self that sort of remembers everything. And it's finding and forging a balance. Not just, with your ability to do things or with your ability to, emotionally process something or what have you, but it's finding a balance in being able to integrate and sort of learn to live and keep things on an even keel.
Yeah, that actually,
regardless of what's coming. Yeah,
that
please.
leads us very nicely into another question, which is specifically about what energetic practices we recommend specifically for counselor types, which is a fantastic question. Thank you for that one. I had also been thinking about this from an empathic point of view, and I think, there are some fairly like intro level tools that I think as we go on through this work of like building our ability to work with energy, they stay just as important. And the tools that I instantly think of when you ask that are grounding, centering, and shielding. They are simple, but they are so effective and they're so necessary. So I guess I can go into that a little bit more, but are there any other practices that any of you would recommend specifically for counselor types, especially for those of you like Kelly who identify as empaths?
Shield your ass off. I just, especially right now. I mean, those of house members who know me, I have a particularly thin shield, but because of the work I do in healthcare, I have to be able to work in and out of it. I've had to, in the past couple months, really fortify that, which is hard to get used to when you're used to like a constant come and go of energy and information, and you have to narrow that down to just what you need for the day and just what you need to know for the day. It's a big change. You'll often hear me in conversation or even online, hear me joke about the background noise that I hear all the time and jokingly call it angel radio for our supernatural fans out there. It's come to even like down tuning that, to even like to be able to drop that out, just to be able to be myself and to know that it's my emotions and not the other 600,000 people or plus that live in this world.
Yeah.
It's been a challenge. So grounding yourself, centering yourself, shielding, it sounds trite, but it really is the best way for anyone to function, especially now.
Yeah, I haven't talked a lot about centering recently, but I feel like that's the one that I like, of those three things, that's the one that I resonate the most with. And I'm not sure if that's something that other counselors feel similarly about. But it goes back to what you were saying a bit, Shay, that like finding who you are now, like to me, that's centering. That's saying, oh, this right here, like these are the important parts of what makes me me. And I can let other things fall away and I will still be me. Like it's not about the physical body. It's more about just energy and what, I mean, for me, I think of it as what feels like home. And once I'm focused on that, I don't have unlimited attention. So if I focus on that centering, it's like everything else sort of falls away and gets a little quieter. And it's not as much about setting boundaries for me as it is about focusing my attention inward. It looks like you want to say something too.
Because as someone who's not a counselor but has had to like teach and instruct for 3 decades and change now, what you're hitting on is inside voice versus outside voice. Like one of the things that I've found to be absolutely essential to surviving as a counselor, and I think by extension an empath, is learning what is me, what is not me, and having a really clear sense of where the boundary lies so that you can enforce that boundary. With
And
shielding or filtering, that like really like having a stable place to start from of like this is my feeling as opposed to these are things that I'm feeling from somebody I'm connected to. I saw so many folks like early on in their practice get like pulled, willy nilly all over the place because they would connect to somebody, whether this person was a partner or just like a work buddy or somebody like whoever was like the sort of like focus of that week, and become them, like get so connected to them that they would start to resonate with them and experience their emotions and experience their desires, and like that's how a counselor is meant to work. But it only works if you're conscious of it and can then make choices of how much of that you're actually using as information to work with the person. You can't let it be a seed that you get tossed on, otherwise you drown.
mm-hmm.
And Shay, you and I saw plenty of that 20
Yeah.
years ago.
I mean, I before you began to touch on it, I was already thinking that, one of the things that I see a lot of counselors struggle with is, as an archetype, a counselor is a connective individual. And a lot of counselors utilize emotional energy or are tapping into the empathic connections that they have with individuals. And those connections are a two-way street. So when you've got that connection going, you're trying to pick something up. Well, you're starting to get a sense of or have something feed through into you that may not be yours. And so, to use one of my favorite therapy things, learning to deal with what is your own shit versus other people's stuff.
Yeah.
And really just learning to sort of identify, when is it me, when is it not me? Because until you can sort of see that this sudden experience or change that I'm seeing, maybe that's not coming from me, and begin to sort of identify, this is who I am, and this other stuff is not. And once I know it's not, then I can work on sort of encapsulating it away and, work on shielding, work on trying to keep myself at a, sort of core place, and not let, I mean, and for me, it's like I literally deal with thousands of connections coming at me from everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
If you let everything in all the time, 24/7, you burn out. I mean, it's like energy flowing through a capacitor. You only have the volume to hold so much before you need to step back. And so learning, that self-care aspect, when you step back to say, okay, I need some time right now, or okay, I need to figure out, do I need an artifact, an item, a crystal, something to shield? Do I just need to energetically lock my space down? Do I need to go out into the woods away from all technology where no one can reach me?
Mm-hmm.
What do I need for me to find sanctuary so that I can find center?
Yeah. So this actually, again, leads beautifully into another question. I have a gut reaction that the counselor role will be prone to burnout. Do you find that that's the case? And
Ding,
do you
ding,
have
ding,
this
ding, ding.
special energy in or out? Or what do you, basically, what are some things that we do to avoid burnout? So I guess there's energetic and there's also personal wrapped up in that. I know that for me, one of the more destructive states that I can enter is when I am too full of energy. That's my my problem. Um, and some of the strategies that I use when I'm feeling like I've just got too much, like there's too much going on in my energetic world, like I am buzzing with too muchness. Um, One of the things that I do and these will be different for every person, I think, although some may overlap, is I like to move my body. I exercise, I go for walks, I go for bike rides. Um, while I'm doing that, I'm not just moving my physical body. I also like I won't focus on it too hard, but I will think sometimes about like, here I am moving my physical body. And I'm gonna let go of some stuff now too in like my energetic space. Like I'm just gonna be right here. I'm just going for a walk. I can forget all the 30,000 things that I'm trying to manage when I get home. They're over there. I'm just here. Gazing in the wind, I guess, is what I'm doing. Um, yeah, what are some other strategies that each of you use to avoid energetic burnout?
If the world wasn't shut down right now, dancing.
Yes. Oh my God,
It so much goes along with what you say. I mean, you're just able to zone out and to let go of what you don't need and let those tentacly bits flap in the wind. I also, on my end, find that right now with it being nice out, that driving somewhere with the windows open of the car and letting those bits flap in the wind and let the wind kind of take out what you don't need. That's one other little trick. And yes, it's hard not to burn out. I think a couple weeks ago, Michelle even called me on it because I was energetically hemorrhaging everywhere and had to kind of check myself. And I appreciated someone else stepping in and being like, "Hey, you know what? I can tell you're having a hard time. And and sometimes you need help from an outside source."
Yeah.
Whether it is a partner, a friend, a professional, a mental health professional, don't be afraid to ask for help. Because it's that point where you've hit that burnout and you can no longer hold anything and you can't even do your self-care. Like all you want to do is flop on the bed and ignore the world. But the world keeps going. You have to be there. You have to be there for yourself and for those you're connected to, but in a capacity that is healthy for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. And a couple of people have asked questions that touch on this, but I'm going to sort of smoosh all their questions into one so that we can answer it. So folks are asking for suggestions on how to reintegrate into the world post-quarantine. And also,
we'll let you know when we get there.
Yeah. I think specifically speaking to energy, one of the best answers to that is to keep on doing the same sorts of self-care that we've been able to do during quarantine. Like, don't try to change everything back to some other way it was all at once. I've been, for the last 2.5 months actually, I've been reading aloud almost every night on Discord. I adore reading aloud. It's like my happiest of happy places. And I'm planning to continue that for, I'm not sure how long after quarantine. Like, that has been an amazing point of stability for me. So I'm gonna keep it. Like, as long as people keep showing up to listen to me talk. But yeah, what do other people have to say either about self-care and how to adapt it to a changing external situation, or how would you deal with the energetic implications of suddenly being exposed to many more people? Not to throw you those grand wild questions all at once, but
I just don't want to be the first one to answer all the time.
Same. Go.
I mean, I know for myself, like as we're getting the green zone and everything, where we have more people out and there's more people out, it is a bit more overwhelming. I think right now I'm kind of keeping to my same habits as before. So it's like work, grocery store, home. That's about it. I think the big difference will be more trying to focus on thriving than just surviving, because I think with the whole quarantine locking down, it's right now and it probably will be for a while more the mindset of trying to survive day to day, and we definitely need to, but also we need to remember to thrive and try to we might not go back to any kind of normal we remember. So we have to just kind of work on making a new normal. And I think that's what's probably hitting people the hardest and making it more difficult, because it's like, I don't want to change. Like, I want to, I don't want to go back. I want to go back to what it was. That's kind of gone now.
It is very much adapting to a new normal. And I know, at least on my end, because of, other than those first 2 weeks that I was quarantined, I've been working this entire time. And coming from the aspect of it at the hospital I worked at, or I work at, our census has been so low that they were starting to furlough people. Because the children's hospital I work at was not hit in the capacity that we had originally expected. So it's a different set of stress. It's a different set of things. You're dealing with a whole lot of people who are like apprehensive for different reasons. And then you'll step out into, say, the grocery store, or you need to pick supplies up, or you need to do anything that is not like your work or home. And it's a whole separate set of stressors. You know, is this person wearing a mask? Is this person going to be in my personal space and I'm going to have to kick them? I mean, not that I'm condoning violence.
Mental kick to the shin.
I guess an energetic push. And it is hard to, once you've been home and in your own bubble, to reach outside that. And it feels raw, and it's weird and sticky and icky. Like everybody, it's icky. And it's just be gentle with yourself. Don't expect, like Alfie said, it's not going back to what was. It's creating your new normal. It's creating what you're comfortable with now. If you're not comfortable leaving your house and you don't have to do it, don't do it. And that boomerangs right back into taking care of yourself. It truly,
like,
you know.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Kelly.
No, sorry, go ahead.
We're too connected in our minds. I was just going to say that I feel like these past couple of months, and potentially the next couple of months, are really, I think they could be really useful times for folks to sort of sit with themselves, to try to figure out, like, what does make me feel better? Like, am I a person who, you know, does the sort of standard self-care thing of like bubble baths or sunbathing, or am I more of a moon bather? Like, do I need not that much light, or maybe like me, do I need to move my body in some way, or do I need to read a good book? Do I need to be disconnected from social media, even though that feels like my lifetime or lifeline? That's what I meant to say, lifeline. Because that really does look very different for different people. And, you know, we have a bit of space now where we can look at that and get to know ourselves better. And I think that will really stand us in very good stead when we go back to or enter a new world, whatever that looks like, as it sort of develops around us.
I think returning back outside our own bubble, I think we also have to both give ourselves a break, and also to understand re-entering. I've gone back into, like, I was working online, but now actually going back into the building and everything, and there's a lot of stress. Everyone's snapping at each other once in a while because there's levels of stressness, and I think going out back to work, or even going to the store, or going out amongst other people that are not in your normal bubble, we have to kind of give people a break in some ways, showing that everyone is under this various levels of stress, and everyone unfortunately like releases stress in different ways, and some of them not so nice, but we have to understand that everyone is trying to cope with this, and some better than others, and we have to understand what our coping is, or what we're feeling compared to what we feel of others. I think that's sometimes difficult because you walk in the store and you're feeling everyone's stress, and you're like, I don't want to be here, and trying to make sure, like, that's theirs, this is mine, get in, get out.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I've been thinking about recently, because I am lucky enough to be friends with a couple of mental health professionals on Facebook, um, is ways that we might be able to use energy, um, both both to like come to a better understanding of our situation in the world, but also specifically on the internal side to like if there are ways that we can use energy and our own energetic practices to increase what's called our distress tolerance. So we're talking a lot about burnout, and this is sort of it's like a half step off from energetic burnout because everything's related. Um, but I feel like, especially when there's all this momentum for social change, one of the things that I experience is a sense of overwhelm and burnout on that front. Like I want to be so involved, like all the time, and I'm ready, and I support movements for people's civil rights. Like that is so important to me. And also, I know that at some point, if all I'm doing is going onto social media and talking with people about the nuances of slightly different opinions, or arguing with people who have very different opinions, I will reach a different kind of burnout. Um, and I feel like for me, again, like another answer to this question, we seem to be circling back again and again to do do the work of taking care of yourself. Um, and I'm wondering, does anybody have any ideas beyond practicing self care, whatever that looks like for you? But do you have ideas about ways that you might be able to enhance your ability to make a difference in the world around you? Would that look like supporting people energetically? Would that look like supporting people with more practical actions? And it's also okay if we leave that question for now and cycle back around to it later because it's a bit of a rabbit hole there. Just where my brain goes, you know. Yeah, we'll leave that one for now.
I don't know if we can check in with anybody who is watching our feed that is not where we are, but it looks like people are having videos freeze.
Okay, on Facebook?
Yeah, Facebook videos are freezing.
Okay, so I would say the Facebook videos are very dependent on the internet connections, both where we are and where you are. So if disconnecting and reconnecting works, great. These will also all be recorded for later, so don't worry too much. I'm gonna shift gears and take a couple more questions. Some of these we're definitely taking our time with moving through the questions. So everybody circle back around during the open discussion times because we will have more time for more questions then. But we have a question about how our personal processes work for raising energy or leaving energy in ritual space. Um, does anybody want to hop on that bandwagon? What does your personal process look like? Shay, you're very quiet again. Possibly.
No, that's just because I'm being very quiet.
Okay.
When I enter ritual space, especially when I enter as a counselor, I see and utilize my ability to connect and to create connections between individuals as sort of acting like a bridge. And so as I walk in and walk through the circle, I will reach out and tie in the warriors that I pass by. And as we circle up in the center and as the counselors begin to raise the energy, I see my role as being one of trying to sort of keep the flow moving, while also keeping connections from ever being overbalanced. I sort of see myself as being uh, a resistor in a circuit. So the energy might be coming in as DC current, and it needs to go out as AC current, and I need it to be changed. I need to slow the cycle down, or I need to speed the cycle up, so that the connections themselves aren't overwhelmed. As the priests come in, I do the same thing. I tie and I tie, and for me, it is literally a sense of weaving. I think of myself as like weaving a friendship braid almost. And once those connections are formed, I sort of hold on to them through the space of the ritual and sit like a spider in a web, feeling the thrum of the energy flowing along those lines, and try to sort of like feel, where is there an imbalance, where does there need to be a tweak to keep something moving, or to, you know, keep the flow from ever going too fast, going too slow, but continuing to be, you know, a sort of harmonious balance.
I know for me, in terms of raising and weaving energy, the way that I sort of conceptualize it in my brain is that I like to think about all the things that matter really deeply to me. So it's often people that I feel strongly about, or it's places that I feel very connected to. And I imagine those things. I imagine being in a place like Tahoe, which is one of my favorite places in the world, or I imagine the feeling that I get when I see, Michelle holding out their arms for a hug, and I let myself really feel that, and then I let it sort of emanate out from me. Um, and I feel like that's most of what I do. Like I try not to tell the energy too specifically what I want it to do. I just let it be there and be in the space for the priests to work with. Um, and yeah, I mean, it makes me feel really good. I love ritual because I get to think about all the things I like most. What about you, Effie, or you, Kelly?
Go ahead, Elfie. I'm waiting for some noise to let up upstairs.
Oh, okay. Let's see. For me, I try to keep the energy kind of like what Larry is saying, this as neutral as possible, trying not to put any particular emotion or drive into it, um, other than just this energy that can be used for the ritual of that time, and also trying to focus on keeping the flow of it and moving in the space and moving around. Unfortunately, I have the most difficulty at times actually feeling the energy. It's more like I think I'm doing a thing, and it seems to be working.
That is really nice confirmation to be able to get.
I was gonna say, for me, when I walk into ritual space, and I get set where I am in the space, and the counselors as one are kind of pulling the energy in. I will pull from the web of connections that we have. Occasionally, I will reach into some elemental magic, depending on where the ritual it is. If we're outside, I'm tapping in to that energy also. If I'm in a building, it's a little bit harder. But it's more of me using my subtle body to pull what I'm working with into me and then out through me, to be then used as building material for the rituals, for the astral space, for the temple space by the priests. I totally just lost my train of thought.
No worries. We can circle back around to it if it comes back online.
No, it is, and it's one of those where I had to learn the hard way not to pull from my family members.
Mm.
One of the very first rituals I went into as a counselor, one of the very first gathers I was at, was a rather intense ritual about peeling away things and looking at the doors that you don't want to see. It was a poison ritual. I inadvertently gave my, at that point, I think she was 11-year-old daughter and my wife instant migraines because
Oopsie.
I pulled from them instead of pulling from the energy that was already in the space. So I had to learn that one the hard way. But then again, kind of circling back to what Shay said, it is very much web work. It's you're pulling from all those connections through all the people, disembodied, in real bodies, those you've met, those you haven't met. It's just kind of pulling all of that in and refining it.
Neat. So I think we've probably got time for just about one more question. I'm gonna plop the new one up on the screen for us. Here we go. Has quarantine affected anyone else in feeling energetically starved? I will say that for me, it has not. Now this is something that I think may be different from case to case. I know that some priesty types I have talked about have definitely expressed that sentiment. I have not heard that as much from warriors. But yeah, what about our other counselor friends here?
Yes. Yes, very much.
I mean, I would say for me, absolutely. And that's because to keep myself sort of energetically balanced, what works best for me are like direct interpersonal social connections. And for the better part of a year, those had, been a lot more distance already as it was. So my secondary source is going out to a bar or a club and dancing. And when all of that stopped,
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, and on this one, for just a quick tangent, one of the things that I utilize in a space like this, and it's a trick that I've used for years, is an item crafting methodology where you have something that you build out or utilize to hold as like an energetic battery. For me, it's literally built into my subtle body structure, and so it just sort of naturally replenishes over time. And when I am in a starvation state, I will literally reach into that subtle body structure and pull that piece of Shay out and reconsume that piece of Shay to keep myself going. And it will auto replenish over time. Slightly different scenario, slight side tangent, but the crafting of an item, something that that you can put out where those social connections are, and then retrieve without having to necessarily be in the interpersonal space. If you can't interact, on that one-to-one level, if you can't get out to those, for me, a lot of it was always massive environment draws where there, a concert where people are throwing off a lot of natural energy. If that's not happening, that battery's not there to tap into. So being able to, sort of literally craft a battery or something that it's not the same, but it's subsistence and it's not starvation.
Yeah, I've been using the limited interactions at work. To some rather heated conversations have happened over the past week, but it's using those interactions that I do have to kind of boomerang into the next one. The same as Shay said, it's like those places where you normally would go and pull ambiently and be able to to get through like that, like even not having gather in person this year. Because I know there's a lot of people that would go from gather to next event, kind of sustaining themselves that way and holding on to what they could. Um, and it has been rough. And if you are feeling energy starved, and I'm always going to circle back to take care of yourself, I know I sound like a broken record, but there, if you're feeling energy starved and you're starting to have physical symptoms, make sure you take care of the physical symptoms also. Not everything is energetically related.
Yeah, that is a really good reminder. Oh, yes, good. I'm not muted anymore. There was a train going by. But yeah, that is a fantastic thing to remember to be aware of. That while you may be experiencing both energetic and physical symptoms, please deal with both of them. Don't just deal with the energy and think the physical will sort itself out. And don't just deal with the physical and think that the energy will sort itself out. It's like the more angles of attack you can make on this, the better. I'm going to ask one bonus question because someone asked us, what are our preferred pronouns? So I'll go first because mine are fun. At least I think they're fun. So I adore a mix of pronouns. I identify as agender. So I actually figured this out because my grandmother, who was suffering from dementia at the time, so, it wasn't a great circumstance, but my grandmother called me that boy who was helping me. And I was like, oh, that boy? Oh, I like that. So that helped me sort of realize that, like, while I've never put a huge emphasis on gender, that's actually because I am agender. I don't identify as any particular gender. I'm just an Illyria. So if you want to refer to me as the Illyria, an Illyria, he, she, they, probably not it, a, zir, what, like, use whatever pronouns. If you want to test a pronoun out on somebody, pick me. I'm down.
I identify. Wow.
Yeah, mix them all up.
All of them all at once. I identify as a cis female. So she, he, not he. Wow. My brain's doing 5 things way too many. She, her. Oh my goodness. I apologize for that. Yeah. There you go. I'll answer to pretty much anything, though, in all honesty, because I don't ever want anyone to assume if you use they there, because it's the easiest before you know. I'm perfectly fine with that also.
Cool. How about you, Elfie?
Actually pretty similar, like she, her, but I'll actually go with they there as well. Like I'm totally down for that too. Or hey you over there.
How about you, Shay?
I've always I've learned to accept that the nature of my physical form will not allow anything other than a cis masculine presentation. And the nature of my internal identity trends towards masculine through neutral. So I generally say any cis masculine to neutral is perfectly fine with me. I like to think that I'm pronoun agnostic.
Very nice. Well, I'm doing this
You're doing
so
it the wrong way.
backwards.
Yep,
there we go. Okay. And there was also a question, so we have a bonus guest for this round. What pronouns do you prefer, Minna?
My public-facing persona is she, her, simply because it's easier, and I'm known as Michelle, and that's like 30 years of established stuff, and it was just easier. But honestly, in private, I go by Zosh. It's he, him.
Yeah.
Your next Y, though.
Yeah. My favorite husband. Currently my husband.
Yeah. And honestly, if you get to know me on my just basic everyday. I'm kind of painfully cisgendered male white, like agonizingly sometimes. But
you did such a good job of listening to other people and amplifying their
okay,
voices.
yeah, but my passion for muscle cars is real.
Oh my god,
It's terrible, it's stereotypical,
it's so true.
awful.
Oh.
Okay, so I learned something new.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny.
I played with Hot Wheels so much as a kid.
No, but now
no, those cars, yeah.
Now we drive by Dodge Challengers, and I will just say, Zosh is such a stereotype when it comes to cars. It is ridiculous.
Tell me more.
I think there's actually been instances of drooling over them.
Whoa.
You drive by and it's just like, what was that?
Wait, can we go back and go by slower again?
Corvettes.
Yep. Yeah, so Zosh and he, him pronouns are what Michelle prefers, but will also answer, because Michelle in public persona, to she, her, or anything in between. So yeah. All right, we are coming up on our next panel, so we're going to hop out for now. In about 10 minutes, we will start back up with Abri's panel on sacred space. And now and then, please remember to eat, drink, move your body, and maybe hug a tree if you have one handy. All right.
Bye.
Thanks for the panel.